first construction nuclear power plant in U.S. Maybe you can talk more about it, or just give me the name. I will look it for on the website.
Well, I was saying I'm waiting for a doctoral thesis, so it's not. I don't know of it. It's not been written. Basically, what happened was that they had freeze periods where they entirely froze the construction. Nothing happened. They basically mothballed a construction site for long periods of time. So it's not as if there was somebody running around with a wheelbarrow, for 40 years. It's not really the picture. It was interrupted for various periods of time. But it's been reactivated several years ago already. So it's like in Korea they would have built a new plant in that time frame. It's like so I cannot give you really an answer. I mean, it's a real research which would be interesting to be done, but it's not been carried out. The name of the plant, and you can look it up, is Watts Bar 2. It's the Tennessee Valley Authority plant.
I have a question.
Sure.
Based on your report, there's decline in the nuclear industry, but those are because they cannot compete in free market economy. Yeah. And what happened to those countries are not free market economy, like in East Asia? Several countries are very interested in. So do you see they will have lots of increase? And another question is, if the nuclear power industry decline, what happened to these international thermonuclear experimental reactors? Will it be abandoned?
Which reactor?
The ITER.
Oh.
And some country using the nuclear energy as camouflage to promote their military intention. So if all these free market economy are abandoning this nuclear industry, will they lose out in the military advantage?
That's a very nasty question. On the East Asia question, well, it's very clear that it's exactly as you're saying. It's like nuclear power is not competitive. So you cannot build today a new nuclear power plant that makes economic sense. It's impossible. So it only works in countries where the government says, well, we don't care how much it costs. We pay it out of the government budget, which is China, it's the only country that has actually enough money to do so. Or it's Russia, that basically is cross-subsidizing the nuclear sector from the gas sector, gas and oil sector.
Iran.
Well, Iran is a very minor player. I mean, Iran is another issue. It's as you say, that's your third question. When you develop actually civilian programs, they obviously always have the potential to be turned at some point into a military program. And there are examples where it has been done, of course. That's how India got its nuclear technology. It was a diversion of civilian. So on East Asia, I don't think that China will abandon nuclear power tomorrow morning. It's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is irrelevant to the global trend. Whether China builds another 10 or 20 or even 50 reactors, it will not change the global trend. And I believe very strongly that if energy policy chose to work in a completely different manner, and this shift takes place from a vertical integration to a horizontal integration, it will be stopped at some point because it just doesn't make, it's incompatible. That's the big point. You cannot really marry a vertical integration with a horizontal integration. You have to make up your mind. This is, by the way, also a question which is not being dealt out in Germany, because they continue The government continues to subsidize heavily offshore wind, for example, whereas, on a decentralized level, there is more and more initiatives that are actually, their base term is like energy autonomy. So they're much more in an optic to generate and use energy services locally rather than generated in the North Sea and ship power to Bavaria, which in my opinion doesn't make a lot of sense. It's bottom up, which is interesting to do and most efficient already for physics reasons. On ITER, nuclear fusion is the longest lasting employment project for unemployed physicists. It's also the most expensive one. I think, let me say this very clearly, I think it's insane. The amount of money that has been drawn into nuclear fusion without a single service to humanity is outrageous. In times when you have loads of money and you don't know what to do, then you can say, well, let's do a little nuclear fusion research, fine. But that's not really the case now, right? We're in a very severe economic crisis, and money is really rare. So if you look at today's doubling of the budget, roughly, of the European Union on nuclear research, where 90% goes to fusion, it's strictly insane. I think, public budgets have to be spent on a cost per benefit analysis, on the basis of a cost per benefit analysis. And there is no benefit of nuclear fusion whatsoever. And it's been, historically, you can show, 50 years ago, it was, because that's when it started, 50 years ago, people were told that it's going to take, be patient, it's going to take 50 years to commercialize nuclear fusion. And you look throughout history, we're always 50 years from, we're pushing this 50-year deadline. We're still 50 years, from commercial use. No, I think it's what will happen to this concretely is very difficult to say, because it's the way you cement those strategic decisions is you make them as international as possible. So it's almost impossible for a single country to pull out, because they're bound into, it's more politics, it's diplomacy than it's actually, this has nothing to do with energy policy. Nothing, in my opinion. In the military, well, I think the most difficult situation, or where this really plays out, is Japan, with Japan's plutonium separation program. And I think it's very clear that, the kind of diplomatic difficulties that arise from this discrepancy, on one hand, to have 40 tons of plutonium, whereas a few kilograms are enough to make a nuclear weapon, without having a destiny for that plutonium. But on the other hand, not being willing to say, well, sorry, it was a mistake, so we will, cease separating more plutonium, raises the issue as you do. People start interpreting this, well, is Japan then thinking of nuclear weapons? Or what does that mean for the capacity, the latent capacity for nuclear weapons in Japan? And I think that it's an issue which will be discussed over the coming years in a much more intense manner. It's very difficult to forecast what will happen, but it got very much heightened attention.
Thank you. So let's give Mr. Schneider a big applause.